Genogram Part 2. So last time I went through drawing up a draft genogram, which is what Suzy did at the end of the first week, when she just had a bit of information about the family, but not that much. We heard how she printed out a relatively clean copy of the genogram, so she took out the notes that she'd made and the little coloured arrows that show the quality of relationships. And she then took that basic genogram when she met with Lucy and when she met with Mike and built on that in order to get more of the family history. And so this is how using a genogram is part of a tool that you continuously use to get more and more information. It's not just something that you draw up and then put on the system and then forget about. So this time I want to look at how Suzy used the genogram to get that family history from Lucy and Mike. So we'll pull up the draft genogram that she drew up last week. Now, one of the most common misconceptions I see is that workers seem to think that there should be only one genogram for the family. These usually end up being either absolutely massive, unwieldy things which are impossible to read, or limited to just the nuclear family and maybe one or two other people. I want you to start being a bit more creative in how you think of genograms. There's nothing that says it all has to fit on one page. There's nothing that says it should only have one genogram for this point in time. You can use genograms to build your understanding of the family's history, relationships and functioning, and it will allow you to create a genogram and chronology at the same time, because those two documents support each other. It'll also help you reflect on how the parents were raised, what their experiences were, and that will tell you a lot about how they've come to parent their own children and the decisions that they're making now. So let's go through this genogram. You'll see that I've made some additional animations in here just to make it a bit more interesting for a YouTube video. You don't have to do that, and in fact I recommend that you don't, because it takes a lot of time. So let's start with Lucy's side of the family. She has her dad, his name's Hafs, and her mum is Asma. Their families are both from Bangladesh. Let's look at Hafs first. He was born in Bangladesh. His family was his mum, his dad, an older brother and a younger sister. The family left Bangladesh and moved to the UK when he was a child. And so you can see here just his little nuclear family that he grew up in. Asma was born in the UK. She was the youngest of 4 children, 2 older brothers and an older sister. Now here we have her family up the top of the screen as well. Hafs and Asma knew each other as young people socially, and both liked to sneak out and party. They found themselves one night at a party together where they maybe weren't supposed to be. They'd had a few drinks, bit of a dance, and then ... Later, Asma found out that she was pregnant. Her family were very upset with her. She named Hafs as the father, and he owned up. He was somewhat supportive of her, and they were married at their parents' insistence. They had a baby called Luja, although she was nicknamed Lucy. The marriage didn't last long, and Hafs left. He remarried and had another family. He still sent some money to support Asma and Lucy, but Lucy felt abandoned by him. Asma later formed another relationship with a guy named Fred. She had a second child with Fred, named Sharon, Lucy's half-sister. Lucy thought Fred was kind of okay, but then suddenly Fred died. Lucy's grandmother stepped in and tried to give some support, but she was also very critical of Asma. Asma did have some other relationships, at least one of which was abusive. So here we have Lucy's basic family genogram before she met Mike. You can see both sides of her family. You can also see the quality of the relationships there. You can see where she was in that position for Mike to come into her life and for things to start from there. Speaking of Mike, let's bring him into the picture and look at his family through the medium of a genogram. So Mike's parents were Jack and June. He has an older brother, John, And he had a younger sister as well, but she tragically died, although we don't know very much about that yet. His mother left at about that time and seems to have had very little contact with Mike over the years. Mike, his brother John, and their dad all lived together. Their dad drank. He could be emotionally and physically abusive as well. Then Mike met Lucy. They came together and Mike was supportive of Lucy, although her family and he didn't really get along. And so now we find ourselves in the present day. The children get support from both parents, although we're not completely sure what's happening between Mike and Johnny, given what Lucy told us. We know that there's been abuse from Mike to Lucy, but there's also a certain amount of support as well. Lucy also got some support from her sister and her mother, although they still don't get on with Mike. Mike does get some support from his brother, we think. We know that he's staying there at the moment. So you can see how that genogram has been used to tell the family story in a way that's a bit different to what we did with the chronology. The difference being that it's easier to use a genogram to do this sort of work with a family, and it's easier to do the genogram if you carve it up into a number of genograms. So what was the genogram that described Mum's family when she was a child? And then when she was, a young adult before she met the father. Same with the dad. When he was a young child, then when he was an adult, what were his supports at that point? And then when their relationship first started, what did their families look like then? What was the genogram there? Who was supporting who? Who was not supporting who, if you can put it like that? And then you have a genogram for where things are, depending on how old the children are, maybe when the first child was born, when the second child was born, where things are at the moment. It's really up to you to pick the points in the parents' lives and the family's life overall to decide where having a genogram of that point in time would be most helpful for you to be able to understand and work with that information in a way that's going to help you when you put it into your assessment. Anyway, that's it for this week's document, so I hope it's been helpful. Bye.